The bold effort made by HBO to adapt one of the most innovative video games ever for television has just been made public. Is The Last of Us in live action truly that fantastic, despite the excitement from critics and its almost flawless Rotten Tomatoes score? We're going to have some very compelling entertainment for the next 9 weeks, if the opening episode is any indication. Episode 1 did a fantastic job of making sure the tone and the fear of The Last of Us game wasn't lost in the adaptation by fusing brand new aspects to keep fans guessing just as much as audience members walking in blind. In this post-apocalyptic setting, The Last of Us first episode really starts years before the game. First, we are placed onto a talk show set where future viral infection threats are being discussed. As speak of pandemics and airlines being the best method for viruses to travel, it feels like it has co-creator Craig Mazin's hands all over it. Before Dr. Newman, John Hannes, snide chemist, adds a counter-argument. While he does not deny that viruses have the power to end the planet, his concern is not with flu-like symptoms, but with a fungus that wants to take over. Beginning with the phrase, seeks not to kill, but to control, Newman describes a flora. It's a moment that discreetly establishes the ground rules for what's to come for the uninitiated. Fans, though, are well aware of the specific monster Newman is referencing. Eating its host from the inside out, substituting its own flesh and stopping the decay of the body. While it creates a vivid picture, it also makes it clear from on that this isn't going to be your typical zombie story. This approaching horror has a more believable edge because to the fact-fiction fusion. It establishes right immediately that this virus is a living organism with a single goal, to eliminate its carrier until there is none. The host eventually interjects with the terrifying forecast, saying, "We'll be back." Flash forward to year 2003, we first see Sarah, Joel's daughter, after a long shot that resembles another well-known windowsill from the film. Even while most of these stories start on a typical day, this one differs since it is Joel's birthday, which Sarah plans to celebrate in a huge way. This is another chapter that was never in the game, dropping us in much earlier than we were in 2013. It places fans in new but familiar territory. Watching Sarah go to school, visit her neighbors, and complete her homework, as routine it may seem, is the perfect quiet before the storm. It still uses the chance to frighten us little in the process, though. Sarah goes next door to visit with the neighbors and loot their DVD collection after having her father's watch quickly repaired. Here, we see a person who is infected with the virus for the first time with certainty. Connie's mother starts moving erratically, out of focus but still present. With all of the sun-bleached yellows, the set design and lighting are reminiscent of Beverly's visit to her old house. It's also a clear indication that, despite the fact that this is a somewhat unique take on an established genre, the best scares are still the old-fashioned ones. Fans of the game would have surely felt the same amount of tension from this vantage point as they did when they first noticed doors getting closed at the Red Wedding. This segment of the game is practically beat-for-beat identical to the game's original introduction. From the touching moment of giving her father's watch to the misguided attempt to flee from a soldier with orders. With Connie Adler's mother appearing to be feeding on her child, Sarah's final visit to the Adlers is the sole exception, as it sneaks in an intriguing detail about the largest threat to the plot of the show. Closer look reveals that Mother Adler appears to be spitting up flora that resembles grass and is pulling herself away from her daughter like a plant from the pavement. This is the first obvious change from the original virus, and it's something the virus inventor was glad to adjust. The game's creator, Neil Druckmann, explained the change from spores to tendrils in an interview with Collider. Just thinking about how there's a passage that happens from one infected to another, and like fungus does, it could become a network that is interconnected, he said. It was a notion that I really liked, that became expanded throughout the show, and it became extremely horrifying to think that they're all working against us in this united way. Sarah's death is one of the many tragedies that occurred in The Last of Us video game, therefore the program had to include it. A heart-pounding escape that captures everything that makes this film great concludes with the unthinkable, leaving Joel holding his daughter as her life quickly slips away from him. Joel is shown rocking Sarah back and forth while wearing a blood-stained outfit. Tommy arrives too late to save her, and the scene from the 2013 game is strangely reminiscent of a bittersweet memory. The original Joel took some time to perfect even then. We eventually get up with Joel, who is now only a shell of the person he once was. Our hero has been beaten to death by tragedy and the passage of time in a world that seems to be clinging to a bygone era. We witness him performing body-burning duties, demonstrating exactly how cruel he has become. He adds a corpse to the growing number of the infected that is presumably not much older than Sarah. He is most definitely not the guardian of a child at this time, but not for long. An organization called the Fireflies asks Veronica to undergo a health examination in another area of the city to determine whether or not she is contaminated. This lot is a sizable dissident faction, and their rallying cry is to search for the light, which, if uttered in Joel's sight, is grounds for a broken jaw. They are led by Marlene, who is portrayed by Merle Dandridge, who was the original Marlene from the game. Their dynamic is slightly different and tense in the show. Marlene is aware that Veronica is actually Ellie. Even though they might not get along well in this situation, it's different in the game. In the 2013 version, they get along well and are connected by a loss that was briefly hinted at on the show. Listen out for when Riley is mentioned. Joel will eventually gain the same degree of respect from Ellie. Before that, though, there is a long way to go, and a battery is necessary to get there. Joel's business partner Tess returns with a black eye and a desire for vengeance after being betrayed and receiving a beating as punishment. They intend to work together to discover where their car battery vendor, Robert, intends to move his inventory next and gain the upper hand. Instead, they discover Marlene without alternatives, a dead Robert and a dead battery. She then turns to Joel and offers him and Tess a bargain to take Ellie out of Boston for an unspecified purpose. He grudgingly agrees. Thus, the official beginning of Joel and Ellie's journey begins. It's unlikely that you would have predicted that after meeting them for the first time. Even though it may sound corny, Ramsey begins to excel in this scene in a role that many believed could only be played by Ashley Johnson, the original Ellie, despite their initial encounter being of the chalk and cheese sort. Ramsey, on the other hand, grabs the torch and illuminates the space, just as Baker had done with Pedro Pascal. Joel misjudged the strength and assurance she exhibited. She responds, "Gotcha. 80s spells danger," demonstrating to Joel that this girl is more than just some bigwigs kid. Our three travelers set out to deliver Ellie to the Fireflies with a plan in place. Tess assumes control, which causes Joel to brood a bit more and Ellie to be completely in awe of being outside. Up until they run across a feathered guard, that is, when they run into their first problem. Ellie assaults during the routine health check, putting herself in the guard's sights as Tess and Joel attempt to negotiate their way out. Joel finds it all too much as memories from 20 years ago resurface and haunt him. The guard is killed as Joel explodes into a rage. Ellie looks on with disbelief. She keeps her gaze fixed on the action as it takes place. When the red mist disappears, Joel regains consciousness and hears Tess' voice, who informs him that Ellie failed the viral test and has bite marks as evidence. It clarifies why this girl is so crucial and that everyone must leave before more guards arrive to investigate, whether the baby is 3 weeks old or not. We return to Joel's radio as "Never Let Me Down Again" plays as they escape the area into the night. An ungodly shout can be heard in the midst of the storm.